cracking, everyone? My name is Eric, and today we're going to talk about methods. So in the last video, we looked at events, and we kind of talked about the idea of having class members, actions and events, and all those different kinds of things that kind of are built into an object which belongs to that object. And I also a few times mentioned the idea of a method, which is what we're going to look at today. Now, similar to events, which we talked about in the last video, methods are basically mini actions that belong to an object. So these are basically built-in actions that you can take with an object, which kind of come along with that object. So let's just immediately go ahead and show what an example of that will look like. So I'm going to make a part, and just like in the last video, I'm going to name it test part. And then I'm going to make a script. And let's say that we just want to destroy this part. So we can actually see it happen, I'm just going to make a variable for the test part, which is game.workspace.test part. And then what I want to do is I want to destroy it when I actually touch it. So this means that we need to get out the touch event, which we learned about last time, and I'm going to connect that to an anonymous function. And then obviously in here we want to actually destroy the part. And writing out a method, first of all, you have to know which method you want to use. And just like events, you can first of all find them under the object browser. And I'm gonna go and find part. And we looked at how we can find events, and similarly we can also find methods. In this case, I want to use the method which is called destroy. So I'm going to say part, and then I'm going to say colon. Normally we say dot with events and properties and all that, but with methods we write a colon and then the name of our method. And you'll notice that when I type des, it suggests that I use the destroy method, and that's what I'm going to do. It also adds in a pair of empty brackets. We'll talk about that a bit later, but a colon, capital letter, and an empty pair of brackets, usually empty pair of brackets, is how you identify a method. So we've now used the destroy method on the part. So this is just the built-in destroy action which belongs to the part, and it will obviously only happen when we actually touch, or when something touches the part. So let's look at how that looks like. So it's there, and then the moment that I touch it, it gets destroyed. It's completely gone, and it no longer exists in the game because we use the destroy method. So now back to the pair of brackets I talked about. The thing is, I describe methods as being mini actions, but another way you can, or mini actions, not mini actions, just action, but another way you can think about them are mini functions. They're basically like a little function, because some of them actually return values, and some of them you can actually give parameters. So let's do something completely else. I'm going to have my, actually no, I'm not going to have my part, but let's say that we want to clone, we want to use the clone method. We want to clone this part. And, so what I might do is I might say game.workspace.test part, and then I can use the clone method. But the problem is, I actually want to do stuff with my cloned object. Let's say that I want to name it something like part2. Well, I can say .name equals part2, but there are two issues with this. The first one is not so big. It just that it looks like it. You don't want to put like anything after a method usually, but the second issue is that after this I actually don't have any way of referencing this clone again. I can only really do it immediately after cloning with one property, but I can't after this say like .transparency. It's going to give me an error. So I need some way to reference this clone several times, and luckily, just like functions, this method actually returns a value. You can see that it returns a copy of this object and all its children. So this means that I can actually save its return value to another variable. So let's say that I write a variable called clone, and then this is going to be game.workspace. The test part, which is clone. So what happens is that this is just a regular method, but because it actually goes ahead and returns our clone, this means that our clone object is now saved to the clone variable. This means that now I can reference it however many times I want. I can, name it part2. I can give it transparency, all of that good stuff. So that's how we deal with returning. So some of these methods actually return some values. Now, another thing you might want to do is in these pair of brackets, like I talked about, you actually also have the option to add parameters. And to show you this, I'm going to give you an example of another method that you'll be using a lot. So right now I have two scripts. It's a bit confusing. But the second script is going to first of all wait 5 seconds. Then it's going to make a clone of my test part. It's going so we're going to say local clone equals game.workspace.test part, and then it's going to clone that, of course. So now we have a clone of our test part, and I'm obviously going to do this stuff like setting its name to part2 so that we can identify it, and obviously we also need to set its parent to be game.workspace. Now, what this does is this just clones our test part and names it something different. So basically creates a new part. But the important thing is that it only happens after 5 seconds. And if we now write a script in this first script, where we try to destroy this second part, what we might do is we might say game.workspace.part2 destroy, and you'll notice that it doesn't suggest anything because it doesn't see part 2 yet. And this is all fine. It seems fair enough that this works, but the problem is that it actually doesn't. And you'll look at why that happens. You'll see that it says that part 2 is not a valid member of workspace, and that's because it doesn't exist obviously when we're here in Studio, but it's because of this wait 5. This wait statement means that this script actually runs before the part gets spawned in. So it tries to destroy something which doesn't exist yet. This is something you often want to do in your games, where something is going to spawn in, but you don't know when that thing will spawn in, and that's exactly what we're dealing with here. We know that at some point our clone will spawn in, but we can't destroy it yet. But we know that it's going to spawn in, and we still want to work with it. So what we can do is we can first of all write a variable for the clone that we want to reference. Or actually, I'm actually going to call it a bit something else. I'm going to call it part2 destroy, which is a bit of a long variable name, but that doesn't matter that much. And instead of saying game.workspace.part2, what I instead am going to do is use the method called waitForChild. And as the name suggests, this waits for an object to appear. So let's say that I'm searching for my object part2. If part 2 exists when it gets this part, that's great. Then it goes ahead and gives that to this variable. But if part 2 doesn't exist yet, then it will wait. It will stop at this point and just wait for the part 2 to spawn in, and then it will save that part 2 to our variable. So as the name suggests, this basically goes ahead and waits for an object to appear. However, we still need to tell which object we are waiting for, and that is what we enter into these brackets. So this is where we put our parameters, and you'll notice that if we open up, for example, the object browser and look under the waitForChild, you'll notice that the first parameter is the child name, and we also have something called timeout, but that's not really important for now. So we, in quotation marks, put the name of the object that we're waiting for, which is part2. And then obviously now that we're actually waiting for a part, we know that by the time it gets to the next time, we know that we actually have our part reference in our variable, which means that we can now use the destroy method. And just to make sure that it's running properly, we can also say something like clone has been destroyed. So let's look at the difference between now and before. The difference is that now, instead of referencing immediately, we're saying if the thing that we're referencing doesn't exist, just go ahead and wait for that thing. Wait for the thing to spawn in or appear. And it goes ahead and it waits. And then when that thing finally appears, which in this case is our clone named part2, it goes ahead and saves that to our variable, and then continues running the rest of the script, meaning that now we can actually use that variable and destroy it, and then print clone has been destroyed. So now we should find that even though our part2 is still being spawned in 5 seconds after running the game, you notice that now it doesn't actually give us any errors. It just says clone has been destroyed, because it actually waited for the clone to be spawned in. So yeah, that's roughly it with methods. There are some methods you'll be using a lot, like waitForChild, and also another one called findFirstChild. But that is really some niche stuff, and I'm going to leave that up to you guys to explore a bit more about. But yeah, that's pretty much it for methods in this video. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll hit you up in the next one. Goodbye.